my guest in studio as we try and take a look at what really would be the solution for the country currently from that particular ruling. But of course, before we get into that, let's just take a look at bits of the ruling from earlier on in the day that was read by Chief Justice David Maraga before we get back to the conversation.
As well as the Constitution and the applicable laws, the court has unanimously determined that the petitions are not merited, and the final orders pursuant to Article 140 sub-Article 2 of the Constitution, as read with Rule 22 of the Supreme Court Presidential Election Petition Rules 2017, are as follows. Petition number 2 of 2017 by Honorable John Haron Mwau versus the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission and two others, as consolidated, is hereby dismissed. Petition number 4 of 2017, Njonjo Mue and another versus the chairperson of the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission and three others, as consolidated, is also hereby dismissed. As a consequence, the presidential election of the 26th October is hereby upheld, as is the election of the third respondent. Each party shall bear its own costs. As I have stated, a detailed reasoned judgment shall be issued within 21 days of this determination in conformity with Rule 23 of the Supreme Court Presidential Election Petition Rules 2017.
All right, and then that paves way for the swearing in of President Uhuru Kenyatta for his second term in the next 8 days. That will be on the 28th of this month at the Kasarani Stadium. But let's just take a look at bits of the law on Article 141 on assumption of office. What really does the law say about this? So Article 141.1 says that the swearing in of the president-elect will definitely be in public before the Chief Justice, or in the event that the Chief Justice is not available, the Deputy Chief Justice shall preside over the swearing in of the President-elect. And then the President-elect shall be sworn in on the first Tuesday following the seventh day following the date on which the court renders a decision declaring the election to be valid if any petition has been filed or has not been filed under Article 140. So then that means that that particular swearing in needs to come in 7 days after today, when that ruling has been delivered by the Supreme Court. The article goes ahead to say that the President-elect will assume office by taking and subscribing the oath of or affirmation of allegiance and the oath or affirmation for the execution of the functions of office as prescribed in the third schedule. And finally, we also expect that Parliament shall, by legislation, provide for the procedure and ceremony for the swearing in of a president-elect. Remember, as I earlier mentioned, the Committee on Assumption of Office is set to meet this afternoon to begin with the preparations for the swearing-in ceremony in the next 7 days. Will be held on the 28th day of this month. Of course, security is set to already be tight at the Kasarani Stadium where this particular function will be held. But back to my guest in studio. Felix Odhiambo talks about the IEBC being at the center of the mess we find ourselves in. And you also talk about us going the IPPG way. Is this the only way that we need to go to heal the country currently?
No, not at all. I think the judicial process that the country was subjected to following the first election, the Raila Odinga's petition, and now this petition that has just been concluded, should make it abundantly clear to everybody in this country that we are faced with the far deeper and fundamental problems that cannot be resolved by the judiciary. Unfortunately, increasingly, we have abdicated as a country from the responsibility of confronting the political issues that we are dealt with, and somehow hope that the judiciary will be able to fix it. Remember, the judiciary nullified the elections, the first election.
Yeah.
and directed the IEBC to conduct an election in conformity to the Constitution. And I doubt whether the IEBC did that. Now, they have upheld the elections of the IEBC. And even with that, this is not the end of the problems that we are faced with. I think the country must recognize that we are faced with a political crisis. The country must embark on a process of serious and comprehensive dialogue, because if we don't do that, we will be faced with the same problems in 2022. But most fundamentally, we must realize that we need constitutional and legal reforms, including dealing with the question of inclusivity and accommodation, but also fixing and reforming our electoral process, including electoral institutions. How do I see the next 5 years to play out? To be honest with you, given the polarized and toxic environment that characterize this campaign period, it's a rude awakening, and people will be shocked if they think that we're going to go to business as usual. You are dealing with a far more enlightened citizenry. President Uhuru Kenyatta, this process may have conferred legal legitimacy on the election, but what it has not dealt with is the political legitimacy. Kenya know that about 30% of the population turned out to vote, of close to 70% did not vote. The citizens of this country also realize for the first time that they actually have the numbers. The so-called tyranny of numbers has been deconstructed. It is only if you look at the regions that voted for the president, I dare say it was substantially, 2 regions. We have to deal with we're going to end up with a 5-year period where the majority of the citizens of this country will feel excluded. But what they now know is that they have the numbers. And that will determine NASA's next course of action, I should think, but also the other citizens. What we need is the president and the opposition to come together, and we must restore this country to a platform for dialogue.
Yes, Prof.
Yeah, I was going to agree with them about how we need to go over that, but inclusivity was been addressed substantially in the law. Our problem is actually obeying the laws we already have. Because one of the law, our, for example, Act mandates that no more than 15% of any single community should be occupying national institutions. The County Government Act mandates that 30% of all employment within the county need to be left to the other Kenyans outside that area. Nobody is obeying the law, and this is the challenge. How do we make the Kenyans obey the laws we already have? Because even in the IMBC and all these laws we are saying, the law is very clear. This is supposed to be an independent institution. And even there is penalties for violating these laws. So the thing is, what do we really do to make ourselves the slave of the law? In other words, to really act and live in accordance with the law, when you are in authority and when you are not in authority. I think the national conversation that we need to have, because now the law is becoming like our Bible. We don't believe in it. We go to church every day, but when you see our actions, we actually don't believe in it at all. Because, we murder each other, we steal from each other, we do all these things, and those who steal, every Sunday you can see them going to church, because corruption is theft. Okay, and just that we baptize it so that we can feel them better. But it is theft. So how do we make ourselves obey the law? In my opinion, that is the problem. And if there's a national conversation, they can go in that direction. But also, in this celebration, I would like to advise the Kenyans that some other Kenyans are pain. Recognize that.
But when you talk about us having a conversation on us obeying the law, even those that their mandate is to ensure that the law is followed also break the law.
That's what I'm saying.
Where does that leave us as a country?
That's exactly what I'm saying, and that's why it's very crucial then we figure out how do we make everybody really follow the law. Because it's not that we are short of laws. The laws are there even as we speak. Even in the electoral justice, these people talking about, those laws are there. If they are followed, there would be no problem. So we need to have a fundamental conversation. What is it about these laws that makes us wish to work without them? What is that?
All right. The secession talks, I would want to imagine that from that particular decision that was made by the Supreme Court, we are going to hear more of that. More counties are set to, even county assemblies are set to debate the People's Assembly motion. So far, about 10 counties have already passed that. In terms of security and the feelings of exclusion by a number of counties, where do we go from there, even with the People's Assembly and the cessation talks continue?
I think certainly the cessation talks will exacerbate the current environment that we're experiencing in the country. Because first of all, if we look at our constitution, I normally say, and I believe in what we call sequential democracy, is that I appreciate the fact that we promulgated our constitution hardly 7 years ago. And we have to, I believe that democracy is like a child that grows. But really, this baby is just 7 years old. Why would we want to murder a child that we fought for and formed? You know, we have, and this constitution is enshrined based on specific values of patriotism, national unity, the aspect of devolution, the rule of law, democracy. Why do we want to just murder this child when the child has hardly grown? And I think the most important thing is that we need to get to a place where we have national dialogue to realize the fact that there's none of us who's greater than the other. Is that this nation is actually for us and by us, given to us by God. Is that if we don't do that and if we don't acknowledge the fact that we are brothers and sisters and peg ourselves on the question of equity and justice, then there's going to be a problem. I don't think secession is a conversation that we need to have now. I think, honestly, secession is something that's going to do away with the gains that we have fought for and built as a nation.
So then what conversation should we be having
the conversation,
when,
you see,
when parts of the country feel like they do not belong?
No, you know, the aspect of the fact is that we still haven't defended and built on devolution, which is a nice concept that can give all of us the equity that we desire. The other thing that we need to do is that we need also to focus on decentralization of power. Do we still feel like presidency is a bit too strong for all of us? The fact that we devolved parts of the presidency into institutions, can we then build those institutions? And I say it and I keep on saying, the nature and the type and the stance that the politics has taken in this country is that it's manipulating every sphere of our lives. And if you look at it, if you look at IBC, those commissioners came in through a political process. Can we do a more professional, because, I mean, if you came through a political process, certainly politicians are going to have some strings attached there. So according to me, we should look at how do we develop on this sequential democracy so that it doesn't put us in a fragile state after every 5 years and
like
after every 5 years, like we are in right now. And if we keep on, bringing the concept of secession, it's going to drag us into 3 years, 4 years. Before we know it, 5 years is here, we're discussing secession, we need to vote, we need to do what, and suddenly, from a security perspective, is that the fragility of this nation right now requires common sense and some type of due diligence, and we look at what kind of a narrative do we build, what kind of lessons do we learn from August 8th to 26th, and because a leader for us is a means to an end, not the end. Right. Is that a leader supposed to get us to Vision 2030?
Yes.
So how do we get to that Vision 2030?
Yes, I want to come back to you to talk about this common sense that doesn't seem very common with Kenyans. But Prof, you really want to react to what he's
because
saying.
you ask a very fundamental question. We can get this problem, we can make it bigger than it is by failing to define accurately what our problem is. Our problem right now is simple. How can we get an election which everybody can accept? End of story. Which we do, because every 5 years for us is a crisis. So how can we get an election where there is no crisis? In Germany, there was an election. Marathon was going on as the election is taking place, and 61 million people are voting. So that is our problem. Now, because that is our problem, secession will remain a talk. It is a talk. And the people are free as long as they don't take measures to implement it. Because Article 5 of this Constitution defines the Kenyan territory. It does not foresee division. It only sees addition, if you read that article. So, but people are free to talk because they need to let off steam and all that. But me, I'm looking forward. You see, part of the function of the office of the president is to act as the symbol of national unity. So I'm looking forward to the president playing that role effectively and telling these Kenyans who are saying they have pain, not telling them you don't have pain, but ask them, where is the pain and how can I be of help? That way, we can get a solution.
Yes, quickly. Let's take a break. Yes.
No, I mean, I agree with the Prof. Summed it up.
Today you agreed on a lot of things with the Prof.
Very well. The problem that we have is electoral justice. There is no election in this country, with probably the exception of 2002, that the election has reflected the will of the people. And if you are in doubt with this election, and that is, look at the turnout in October the 26th election. And the other thing is that throughout independence and all the holders of the office of the president, yes, the Constitution demands that the president should be the symbol of national unity. There is no holder of that office that has given us the Mandela moment, where you can say for a fact that the president is discharging that role. What we need is electoral justice, an election that is democratic, that is free and fair. Ghana went through a very competitive election, and people accepted the verdict despite the fact that the difference between the winning candidate and the losing candidate was 23,000. They accepted. It's the political legitimacy that I was talking about.
All right, I would want you to, when we get back from the break, to just tell us what is this thing that Ghanaians are having different from what we are having right now. But let's take that break. We'll be back with more on this conversation. Don't go too far.
This is KTN News.
My business is Mark and Reese Company Limited. We are a web agency. I've been in business for the last 5 years. I started by designing a website page for myself. I also have a Facebook page and a Twitter handle. Someone introduced me to Skiza Bizna. It has really given me an edge. For me, I was thinking of something that could really assist my business to grow. So I heard about Skiza Bizna and I subscribed. It's easy, it's affordable, it's simple, it's unique. So it worked miracle for me. Since I started using Skiza Bizna, I don't have to explain to clients when they're calling me. They already get the feedback. They get to know my business on my callback tune. So it has really helped me. Anybody I come across, I always tell them to subscribe to Skiza Bizna because it's amazing.
To get your personalized business tune, send an SMS with your business name, location, and a brief description of your product or services to 22229 and watch your business grow. Skiza, grow your bizna. The convenient way to advertise your business.
It's about being Kenyan. It's about Friday.
Thank you very much for staying with KTN News. My name is Betty Callow.
About winning, celebrating.
Protokiaro.
It's all about our language.
Chiropractor.
Chiropractor.
Not forgetting laughter and lots of fun.
MC Jess and Betty Chalo will be right back on the Friday briefing.
Watch KTN News round the clock on Signet Channel 32, DSTV Channel 274, GoTV Channel 94, Zuku Channel 14, and on Bamba TV Channel 2.
My mom used to tell me there was like a skirt wanapewa, unavaa hiyo skirt, then you go and osha, alafu unaenda unanyonyesha. So, and hiyo miaka hakukuwa pia na magonjwa. So, alikuwa ananyonyeshewa. So alikuja kuniona akapata, ilikuwa imepita like 3 days. Kukuja kuniona akapata nilikuwa nishapewa maziwa. Kwa hivyo ukizaa mtoto wa 1 point, hata apunguze akuje into grams, usikuwe na hofu ama usione ati hata kuwa.
This is KTN News.
Welcome back. You're watching KTN Newsdesk. I just want us to pick it up from where we left it off. You were talking about the Electoral Commission in Ghana and how it performed a few months before we went into an election ourselves. What is this thing they're doing different that we need to emulate as a country?
Two things. One is honesty and integrity. What Prof was saying a few minutes ago, the integrity to honestly follow and comply with the Constitution and the laws. They are living the Constitution moment. A Constitution in Ghana is not just a written piece of paper. They are living it. The second thing, of course, is the integrity of the Electoral Commission. When the Electoral Commission of Ghana talks, and by the way, if you look at the politics of Kenya and Ghana in this continent, these are the only two countries with the most competitive and fiercely contested elections, with the two political formations that are almost at par. But what has shepherded Ghana around this complex political turbulence has been the Electoral Commission of Ghana. In 2008, when the current president, Nana, was the Foreign Affairs Minister, Kufuor was the president. And they were, the New Patriotic Party, which is his party, was contesting against Jerry Rawlings' party, the National Democratic Congress, that was in opposition. That election came after our disputed 2007 election and post-election violence. The entire country, after Kenya, we had Zimbabwe 2008, that again went almost the Kenyan way with the serious post-election violence. The entire world shifted to Ghana. Will Ghana go the Kenya-Zimbabwe way, or will Ghana make Africa proud? Now, in that election, it went through three contests. The first round, the ruling party won, the New Patriotic Party, the current president. In the second round, none of them got, of course, 50% plus one. Jonathan Mills of NDC, who was in the opposition, won with about 40,000 votes. None got 50% votes. So at that time, the Electoral Commission of Ghana had suspended election in a constituency called Tyne constituency. And since the difference was about 23,000 votes, they needed to hold the election in that constituency because it had 53,000 registered voters. And they had what is called the third round. Within that time, the country was on a knife edge. And it took the Electoral Commission of Ghana and President Kufuor to hold the country together. When they made a declaration, the country accepted, and they never went the Nusu Mkati way. What I'm saying is, if there is legitimacy and acceptance of result, you don't even need to, you can form whatever government you have, because there is both political and legal legitimacy. The other thing that works in Ghana is the institutionalization of political parties. As I've said, there are two strong parties. There is nothing like defection. In fact, the ruling party, the Secretary General of the ruling party, when he heard that politicians are defecting to other parties, he told me if he was to leave NPP to go to NDC, first of all, the people who will reject him would be the NDC. They wouldn't believe you. That if you can leave your party, then you have nothing upon which to...
You can't stand on anything.
You don't stand on anything. So there's a serious respect for the rule of law. There's a serious culture of constitutionalism in Ghana. And yes, there is strong institutions, but above all, there is an institution called the Electoral Commission of Ghana that is trusted by both sides of the political divide. And by the way, they are hated by both the New Patriotic Party and the NDC don't like the Electoral Commission of Ghana. Why? Because they can't compromise them.
So, yes, I would want us to wrap it up. So, closing comments, where do we go from here?
In my opinion, there is much more than what he has said about in Ghana, really. Ghana was able to produce Kwame Nkrumah because he's one of the icons in Africa. So, equivalent to Nyerere here as our neighbor in Tanzania. I think the values people hold, you can see them in the kind of leaders they produce. We have a value deficit in this country because we have never able to produce somebody comparable to Kwame Nkrumah or somebody comparable to Mwalimu Nyerere or to Mandela. So we need to revisit ourselves, even what we do in our own homes, the children who are growing up. Because we need to be able to produce these people who love us so much that they can go to any extent to make sure that we are united and we are living like a family.
All right, Prof. Parting shots.
Yeah, parting shot is that, as Prof said, for me, the critical thing in this country is all about values. is what we espouse as values as Kenyans. And one of the things we need to do is promote the values of nation unity. If we don't, it doesn't matter how much you legislate, because you cannot legislate morality. It doesn't matter how much you police people. Is that are people devoid of values, there'll be more coercive force used by the government, whatever it is that there is that we have to be people who teach and train our people on a certain value system. Elections will be contested across the world. We've had more fierce elections even in America, whatever it is. But it doesn't matter how much an election is contested. If the people are devoid of values, then you'll see killings and burning each other and all that. We have to get into a place where we sit back and go back to the basics and train our people is what does it mean to be a Kenyan? What does it mean to be patriotic to this nation? A lot of us can't say the national anthem. We can't sing it fully. We don't even want to be Kenyans. We want to secede and all that. We have to train our people on a solid value system.
Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining me here on KTN Newsdesk. Felix Odhiambo on my immediate right is an expert on election law and governance. Dennis Nthumbi is a security analyst, as well as Professor Naituli Gitile, Commissioner with the National Cohesion and Integration Commission. Gentlemen, once again, thank you very much for being with us here. So let's take a